Captain Jace had trained for war, studied peace, and seen both. But nothing prepared him for the first moment he stood face to face with the alien commander. Vaelra, her silver armor shined under the cold blue lights of the Zalari flagship, her pale skin marked with glowing patterns, and her eyes sharp and unreadable. Watched him like he was a bug on her boots. He had expected coldness from the alien military, but the chill in her eyes cut deeper than any blaster. Jace stepped forward, offering a respectful nod. "Captain Jace, Human Diplomatic Division, Commander." Vaelra didn't nod back, didn't even blink. She just turned around and said in a flat voice, "Follow." The hallways of the alien ship were silent, wide and full of strange writing on the walls. Jace could feel eyes watching him from hidden cameras and strange devices. As they walked, she spoke only once. "You will not be allowed near the command center. The crew does not trust humans." Jace wanted to ask, "Do you?" But he didn't, not yet. She brought him to a small room, not a prison, but not friendly either. One small bed, a metal desk, and no windows. "There will be no escort," she said, "but every movement will be monitored." Then she left. The door hissing shut behind her. Jace sat on the bed, tired but alert, his heart still pounding from the way she had looked at him, not like an enemy, not even like a guest, but like a problem she didn't want to deal with later that night. As Jace changed into his sleepwear, he noticed something strange under the pillow. It was a folded piece of paper, soft and worn, written in trembling hand. It said, "Don't trust her unless she looks at you twice." Jace frowned, looking around, but the walls were smooth and blank, no sign of who left it. He couldn't sleep, not after that, not after those eyes. The next day, he was called to the observation deck. Commander Vaelra stood there alone, hands behind her back, looking out at the stars. "You will remain on this ship until negotiations are ready," she said without turning. "May I ask why I was brought here early?" Jace asked calmly. She said nothing for a moment, then replied, "The council ordered it." "Did you agree with them?" he asked. This time she turned and looked at him, once, then turned her head away. But something happened. She stopped in mid-turn, paused, and turned back to look at him again. It was a small thing, a glance, just a second longer than needed. But Jace noticed. Her eyes met his, and for the first time, he saw something behind the frost hesitation, maybe even fear. Jace stayed silent. Pretending he didn't notice, she turned again and walked away, leaving him standing there, full of questions. Back in his room, he stared at the paper again. "Unless she looks at you twice." She had. Why? The next 2 days passed slowly. Vaelra kept her distance. Always formal, always cold. But once, during a ship-wide drill, the lights dimmed and alarms rang out. Jace was rushed into a safe zone. Vaelra was already there, arms crossed, expression tight. When the door sealed behind them, she whispered, so low he almost missed it, "I warned them you were not ready for this ship." "What do you mean?" He whispered back. She didn't answer, just looked at the camera in the corner of the room, then turned her back to it and mouthed the words, "Not here." The lights returned, the drill ended, and the cold mask was back on her face. But now, Jace was sure, Commander Vaelra was not what she seemed. That night, another note appeared, this one under his food tray. It read, "If you want to know the truth, be awake at second bell." Jace waited, sitting in the dark, listening to the low hum of the ship, his heartbeat loud in his ears. At second bell, the door to his room opened silently. Commander Vaelra stood there, no guards, no armor, just a simple robe and unreadable eyes. "Come with me," she said quietly. Jace didn't speak, he just followed through dim corridors, past sleeping guards and silent walls, until they reached a small room with no cameras. No devices, just 2 chairs and a single light. Vaelra closed the door and turned to face him, her voice low and different, almost human. "You are not safe here, Captain," she said, "and neither am I." Jace didn't know what to expect. But he hadn't expected this. Not the commander in soft clothes, not her speaking in a voice that almost sounded like it cared. They were inside a quiet room, small and plain, no screens, no watchers, no sensors humming in the walls. It was like the ship forgot this place existed. Vaelra stood still, her eyes on the door even after it sealed shut. Her hand rested lightly near her side, where a weapon would usually be. But tonight she carried none. "I don't have much time," she said, her voice still quiet, but firmer now. "If they find me here, I'll be questioned." Jace stood near the wall, arms crossed, heart racing but face calm. He was trained for high-pressure moments, but not for this kind of confusion. "You said I'm not safe," he replied. "Then why bring me here alone?" She looked at him, and for a second, her cold mask cracked, not with emotion, but with doubt. "Maybe fear, because they lied to you," she said. "This mission wasn't arranged by your human council. It was arranged by someone inside ours." Jace blinked, trying to keep up. "Why would anyone inside your empire request a human diplomat without your leaders knowing?" "Because not everyone in the Zalari Empire believes in endless war," she said. "Some of us believe peace is possible, but we're watched, hunted, silenced." She stepped closer, her presence strangely calm now. "I was ordered to host you as a test, to see if a human could be trusted with knowledge." Jace's breath caught. "What kind of knowledge?" "I can't tell you yet," she said quickly. "Not here, not now, but know this. Everything around you, the guards, the cameras, the crew, they're not protecting you. They're studying me," Jace whispered, understanding blooming like ice in his chest. Vaelra gave a small nod. "And I'm protecting you in ways they can't see." Silence stretched between them, heavy and strange, and Jace wondered if he had just crossed a line he couldn't uncross. "Then what do I do?" he asked. "Play dumb? Act like I believe them?" She turned away, thinking, then said, "Tomorrow morning, you'll be escorted to the weapons gallery. Pretend it's just a tour, but count the doors." "The doors?" Jace asked, confused. "Yes," she said. "One of them will be slightly misaligned, old engineering fault. It's not really a door. It's a wall covering a hidden chamber." "What's inside?" he asked again. She didn't answer. She only said, "Don't try to enter it. Just make sure they see you looking at it, and nothing more." Jace frowned. "That sounds like bait." "It is," she said, "but not for you, for the ones watching." She opened the door again, fast and smooth, her face going cold once more, armor of emotion snapping back in place. "Go," she said, and without another word, vanished down the dark hall. The next day, Jace played his role. Calm, polite, curious but not too curious. Two tall alien guards led him through the weapons gallery, a long hall of past victories and deadly tools. He asked the right questions, admired their technology, made quiet comments about the size of their energy blades, and then, like she said, he paused by the wall with the misaligned frame. He tilted his head, looked at it with a thoughtful face, and asked the guard next to him, "Is that one decorative?" The guard looked, confused for a moment, then shrugged. "Old part of the structure, means nothing." But Jace caught the way the other guard tapped his communicator. They saw it, just like she wanted, that night. Jace returned to his room, pretending everything was normal, but there was something new under his bed this time. Not a note, not words, but a small disc. Cold to the touch, he placed it on his table, and a projection flared to life. Vaelra's image appeared. Hazy and flickering. "You did well," her recorded voice said. "They took the bait. We will meet again soon. But be careful. Trust no one except me." The message ended with static. But Jace didn't sleep that night. His mind ran through every detail, every word, every look she had given him. She was cold, yes, but now he wondered, was that coldness armor or a warning, or something else he hadn't seen yet? And what was she really risking to protect him? He didn't know, but part of him wanted to find out, even if it meant walking deeper into danger, even if it meant trusting someone who still wore a mask. Because when she looked at him, even for just a second, it felt like she wasn't the one who needed help. It felt like she was the one asking to be saved. Jace didn't know what time it was anymore. The ship had no windows, no clocks, only the endless hum of machines and the silence of people pretending not to look at him. Since the day of the false tour, things had changed, not loudly, not openly, but in quiet ways he could feel in his bones. The guards were still polite, but now they stood closer, their hands nearer to their weapons. The food in his tray came later, sometimes colder, like the kitchen no longer cared if he felt like a guest or a prisoner. But the worst change came with the cameras. 3 of them had been added to his room overnight. Small and hidden, but not well enough to escape a trained eye. Jace knew the bait had worked. They were nervous now. Someone behind the scenes had noticed him looking at the wrong thing. And whoever Vaelra feared, they were now fearing him too. He kept his act calm, moved like a man with no suspicions, nodded to guards, said thank you, read the fake history documents on his tablet like a good little guest. But inside he was searching, waiting, watching for her. Vaelra didn't return for 2 days. Not even a glimpse of her silver armor. Then one night, a mechanical noise came from the vent behind his bed. It was not natural, not part of the system. He pulled the vent open slowly, and inside was a folded piece of alien cloth, tightly wrapped around something heavy. Inside it was a small communicator. Not standard issue, probably illegal. He powered it on, and her voice came through immediately. Her tone was low, rushed, sharp, like she was hiding somewhere with only seconds to speak. "They're planning to move you," she said. "It's not a transfer, it's a trap." Jace leaned closer, whispering, "Why? What do they want?" Her answer came after static. "They want to see how much you know, how far you'll go, and if I've already told you anything that makes you dangerous." Jace didn't like how that sounded. "So what do we do?" "We turn the trap around," she said. "Let them move you, let them take you, but I'll be there." The communicator clicked off. The next morning, just like she warned, the guards arrived with quiet orders. "No smiles, no fake explanations. You've been relocated," one of them said. "Commander's request." That was a lie. Jace could hear it in the voice, but he played along, nodding, gathering his things slowly, his hands calm while his heart thundered like war drums. They led him through dark corridors he hadn't seen before, not the shiny, clean halls of the upper decks, but deep industrial tunnels with flickering lights and steam leaking from broken pipes. When the door finally opened, he found himself in a strange room, round, metallic, and empty except for a single glowing panel in the center. The guards pushed him forward, then stepped back. The door slammed shut behind him. He turned slowly, checking every corner, every surface, but there was nothing until the panel in the center flickered, and a symbol appeared. It was human script written in his language, not Zalari, one word, only glowing red. "Bait." His breath caught, and before he could move, a second door on the far side opened, and Commander Vaelra entered with a weapon in her hand. Her face was hard, her steps cold, the same mask of command she always wore in public. She pointed the weapon directly at him, no hesitation, no words. Jace didn't move. His body froze, not out of fear but confusion. Then he saw it, the smallest thing. Her fingers were shaking, not much, just enough to see if you were looking for it. "Commander," he said carefully, "is this part of the plan?" She didn't answer, just kept the weapon aimed. But her eyes darted sideways for 1 second, toward the wall behind him. Jace understood. He turned his head slightly and spotted a crack near the ceiling, a surveillance lens, recording every second. So this was the test, not for him but for her. He took a step forward, very slow, very calm. Her weapon followed him, her jaw clenched. "If this is real," he whispered, "shoot me." Silence stretched, deadly and long then, without warning. She fired not at him, but at the lens on the wall, the blast melting it into slag. The sound echoed like thunder, and the room fell silent. She dropped the weapon, ran to the wall panel, and punched in a code. A section of the floor opened, revealing. "A narrow passage. Go," she said, her voice breathless. "That was our only chance." They disappeared into the dark corridor below as alarms began to wail behind them. Jace followed without question, his mind spinning with 1,000 thoughts. But only one kept echoing in his head. She had pointed a weapon at him and missed. On purpose, she had made herself look like the enemy to keep him alive. Whatever game they were in now, there was no turning back, and whatever she really was, cold or not, mask or not, he would follow her into the fire, because somewhere behind her coldness, something had begun to burn. The tunnel was narrow, made of old metal and lined with wires that sparked softly in the dark. Jace followed close behind her, his boots echoing with each step, his heart pounding with every breath. Vaelra didn't speak, her pace quick and focused. Her silver hair now loose from her usual style, and her weapon gone. Behind them, alarms echoed through the ship. The sound was distant, but growing, like danger was catching up fast. She stopped at a metal hatch, knelt, and opened a small panel. With fast fingers, wires tangled inside like veins. "You've done this before," Jace whispered, watching her hands work without pause. "Too many times," she said quietly, "but never for someone else." The hatch opened, and they slipped through into another corridor, wider, darker, and colder. The air smelled like burnt circuits and oil. This was not a hallway built for passengers. It was a maintenance zone, forgotten by design. They kept moving, deeper and deeper into the ship, until Vaelra stopped beside a broken vent and pulled out a device from behind the wall. She pressed a button, and a hologram flickered into life. A 3D map of the ship, old and incomplete, but detailed enough to show where they were. "We're in Sector 9, she said, pointing. "The lowest level of the ship, very few patrols, but also very few exits. Then why come here?" Jace asked, wiping sweat from his brow. "Because this is where the secrets sleep," she replied, her voice lower now, almost a whisper to herself. She led him around a corner, past cracked walls and old marks of battle, strange scorch patterns that looked almost too precise to be from weapons. "This ship is older than it looks," she said. "They built it on the bones of something ancient." Jace looked around, confused. "Ancient? How old are we talking?" "I don't know," she admitted. "But something about this lower level is hidden from the crew logs, from official records." They entered a room that looked more like a cave than a chamber, with walls melted into strange shapes, symbols, scratched into the surfaces that didn't match any language he knew. Jace felt cold all of a sudden, not from the air, but from the strange energy that wrapped around his spine. Vaelra stepped into the center, kneeled, and touched the ground like she was feeling for a heartbeat. "They don't want anyone down here," she said. "Not even commanders." Jace knelt beside her, his voice low. "Then why bring me?" "Because you speak a language they forgot," she said. "Because you're human." He didn't understand what that meant, but before he could ask, the floor beneath them shuddered. Something heavy moved below, metal grinding on metal, and a low sound, like a whisper in a dead language, filled the air. Vaelra stood quickly, pulling Jace with her. "They activated the scanners. They'll find us soon." They ran again, turning through twisting halls, passing broken lights and half-finished construction, until they reached a sealed door that looked untouched for decades. Vaelra placed her hand on the panel, but nothing happened. She tried again, still nothing. Jace stepped forward and touched the center of the door without thinking. A light glowed under his hand, and the door hissed open. They both froze, the moment thick with something unspoken. Inside the room was a sphere, black and humming with energy, floating above a silent metal stand. The air around it shimmered like heat but felt cold on his skin. Vaelra stepped forward, eyes wide with a look Jace had never seen before. Not fear, not awe, but something else, like recognition. "This is it," she said softly. "This is what they're hiding. What is it?" he asked, walking beside her. She looked at him, then at the sphere, and whispered, "A machine that speaks in thought, listens in silence, and remembers everything." Jace reached out, slowly, feeling pulled by something unseen, but she stopped him with a firm grip on his wrist. "No," she said. "Not yet. Not now, they'll sense it." Alarms blared louder in the distance, footsteps echoing through the metal halls like the drumbeats of a coming army. Vaelra pulled him back, sealed the door again, and turned down another path, fast and quiet, her voice sharp but calm. "We need to reach the old medbay. There's a ventilation route from there that leads back to the middle decks." Jace followed her through the twisting maze, but he could feel it now. Something was watching him, not a person, not a camera, but something older, deeper, something that had been waiting as they ducked into another corridor. She stopped suddenly, pressed him against the wall, her body close, her voice barely a breath. "They're coming from both sides," she said. "We're surrounded." She looked him in the eyes, and for the first time, her voice broke, just a little, just enough to sound human. "I'll distract them," she whispered. "You keep going." "No," he said instantly. "We go together." Her eyes searched his face, and in that one quiet second, something changed in both of them. "I never meant to care," she said. And then she ran into the shadows, her silver hair flashing like lightning as she disappeared down the corridor. Drawing the enemy toward her, Jace wanted to scream her name, but didn't. Instead, he ran the other way, heart on fire, mind spinning with one truth he could no longer deny. Commander Vaelra had started as cold steel, but now she was heat, risk, sacrifice, and something he had never expected to find in a place like this. Hope. The med bay was darker than he remembered, filled with shadows that stretched across rusted equipment and cracked glass. Jace stumbled inside, gasping for air, his hands scraped and dirty from crawling through the vents. He shut the door behind him, locked it manually, and leaned against the cold wall, trying not to shake, trying not to think about what might be happening to her right now. Vaelra had run into danger without hesitation, not for the mission, not for her empire, but for him. And now he was alone, again. The emergency lights flickered weakly above, casting strange colors on the broken medical chairs and silent machines. It looked like no one had stepped inside this place in years. He walked forward slowly, each step echoing, then suddenly stopped when he saw movement in the corner. A small figure, half hidden under a silver sheet, lay still on one of the beds. Jace moved closer, breath tight in his chest, and slowly pulled the sheet away. What he saw wasn't a person, not anymore. It was the shell of something once alive, now dried and twisted, eyes wide open, but long dead. Its skin like thin paper stretched over bone. He stepped back in horror, almost tripping, but caught himself, and then noticed the wall next to the body. It was covered in writing, scratched over and over in shaky alien symbols, most of them unreadable, except for one phrase repeated in several languages, including his own. "Do not speak to the orb. It dreams, it remembers." Jace remembered the sphere from earlier, black and humming like it was alive, and suddenly the strange energy in this place made sense. Whatever that orb was, it wasn't just a machine, it was something more, something that reached into minds and twisted them. He turned away and opened a side panel. Inside was the old ventilation shaft Vaelra had spoken of. He started crawling, arms shaking, the metal scraping against his skin, his thoughts running wild with images of her fighting, bleeding, maybe already caught. But then a sound came through the shaft, soft light, almost like a voice. "Keep moving, Captain," it said, and for a moment he thought it was her, but it wasn't. The voice didn't come from behind him, it came from inside his head. He froze, closed his eyes, and gritted his teeth. "You're not real," he whispered. "I didn't touch the orb." And the voice laughed, low and distant. "You didn't have to." Jace pushed forward, crawling faster, desperate to get away from that voice, from the memory of the warning. After what felt like hours, he reached a grate and kicked it open, falling into a dim hallway above the engineering deck. The lights here still worked, barely, and he could hear faint voices, crew members running in the distance. shouting about intruders and betrayal. He slipped into a storage room, hid behind crates, and tried to catch his breath. Then the communicator in his pocket buzzed, just once. A soft pulse of light blinking on its side. He tapped it. And Vaelra's voice came through, weak and strained. "I'm alive," she said. "Captured, but alive," Jace exhaled, relief washing over him, even though her words were cold. They held something warmer now, something close. "They're taking me to tribunal," she said. "Fast-track judgment, no trial, no defense. Where?" He whispered, already standing, already moving. "Main tower." "Command courtroom," she replied. "But you can't come for me, not yet. They'll expect that." "I'm not leaving you," he said, his voice firm. She didn't argue, not this time. Instead, she said something else, something that froze him in place. "There's a file stored in the engineering core, sealed under my command code," she said. "If you show it to the Zalari High Council, it could change everything. Then, why didn't you use it yourself?" he asked, confused. "Because I'm not human," she replied, her voice quieter now. "They'd never believe me, but they might believe you." The communicator went silent, the connection cut. Jace stood alone in the storage room, his fists clenched, his path now split in two. He could run for the core, retrieve the file, save a planet, maybe even save millions, or he could run for the tower, find her, risk everything for one person who didn't even belong to his world. But as he stepped out into the hall, heading toward the engineering level, he knew deep down he wasn't choosing between those two paths. He was going to do both, because whatever this cold galaxy thought about humans, about weakness or warmth, they were about to learn something new. They were about to see how far one man would go, not for glory, not for orders, but for someone who had once looked at him with cold eyes and then risked everything to save him. And this time, he would return the favor. Jace moved like a shadow through the lower decks, his body aching, his mind heavy with decisions he hadn't wanted to make. He had no armor, no weapons, just one fragile device in his pocket and a burning promise in his chest: the engineering sector pulsed with heat. Metal groaned around him like the ship itself was in pain. Lights flickered overhead, casting strange shapes on the walls as he pressed deeper into the restricted zones. Every step was a risk, every corner could hold patrol, but luck stayed with him, or maybe something else was watching, guiding. Maybe even that strange sphere had touched more than just his thoughts. He reached the central core doors, sealed tight with thick locks. The access panel blinked red, waiting for the right command code. He pulled out the device Vaelra told him about, held it close, whispered her name into it like a prayer. A soft green light appeared, and the doors opened with a deep hiss, revealing a long hallway glowing in gold and blue. Inside, the energy pulsed from a giant cylinder in the center, humming with power older than the ship itself. The walls were lined with strange carvings, half mechanical and half symbolic, like someone had tried to hide religion inside a machine. Jace walked carefully toward the terminal, a narrow console standing beside the core, ancient and barely functioning. He placed his hand on the panel, and a voice calm and alien spoke in his language. "Identity not recognized," it said. He leaned close, speaking slow and clear. "Override Commander Vaelra, authorization Echo 37. There was silence, then a chime, and the screen lit up. Dozens of files appeared, but only one glowed, with a golden frame, titled in Zalari symbols and translated underneath as Truth Protocol. He tapped it, and the screen played a series of recordings. Vaelra's voice narrating scenes of secret experiments, failed peace negotiations, and orders from the high command to sabotage human relations. It was everything proof that the war was being kept alive on purpose. Not because of hate, but because peace was bad for the Zalari economy, bad for their image, bad for their power. Jay stood there, jaw clenched, fists shaking, the truth heavy in his hands, but he didn't have time to feel angry, because a sound behind him made him spin around. 3 guards stood at the entrance, Weapons drawn, armor shining, he raised his hand slowly, backing toward the terminal, ready to destroy the file if they shot. But before they could move, an explosion shook the ship, knocking them off their feet. The lights went out, alarms screamed, red lights flashing across the core room. Jace didn't wait. He grabbed the device, ran past the stunned guards, and vanished into the smoke. He didn't stop until he reached the central lift, climbed into the shaft, and started pulling himself upward, each level echoing with chaos, the whole ship now in panic. He knew where they would take her, the tribunal chamber, a massive room at the top of the ship, where judgment was given without mercy. He climbed with bleeding hands, every breath burning in his chest. By the time he reached the tribunal level, the hallways were swarming with noise, guards shouting, officers confused. No one stopping him because no one expected him to be there. He walked through them with purpose, like he belonged, like he wasn't just a human who had no place in their world. The chamber doors were open. Dozens of Zelari seated in tall chairs, glowing with status, their eyes full of pride and poison. Vaelra stood in the center, chained, bruised, but standing tall, her head high. Jace stepped forward, silence falling as the crowd turned, shocked, confused. "You don't belong here," one of the tribunal leaders growled. Jace didn't answer. He simply raised the device and played the file. Vaelra's voice filled the chamber, cold and clear, spilling every secret they had tried to bury. Gasps followed, then shouting. Some stood in anger, others in fear, the whole room tearing itself apart with words and blame. But Jace didn't care. He walked straight to her, unlocked her chains, and held out his hand. She stared at him, her eyes wide, her lips parting slightly, and for once, there was no mask, no cold wall between them. "You came back," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "I never left," he replied, pulling her close. Behind them, the chamber burned with voices and war, but in that moment, none of it mattered, because the truth had been spoken, and she was free, not just from the chains, but from everything they made her become. And even if the galaxy still burned around them, they had one another, two enemies who never wanted war, who never believed the lies, who had chosen each other in the fire. The skies above the capital planet were dark with warships, but inside the stolen vessel, everything was quiet. Jace sat near the main controls, watching her silhouette as she stood by the front window. Vaelra didn't speak, not yet. She was still wearing the cloak he had given her, still holding the weapon she never fired at him, and yet, everything between them had changed. Below them, cities glowed with panic. The High Council had collapsed overnight. Files leaked, truths revealed, citizens angry, soldiers confused, and no one knew who to trust anymore. And yet, even in all that chaos, she had chosen to leave with him, not because she had to, but because she wanted to. They had escaped the tribunal chamber moments before the doors sealed, helped by one of her old allies, a silent officer who owed her a life debt. Now, floating above a burning empire, they were fugitives, but not alone. Jace reached out, tapped the side panel, and a small map appeared, showing nearby sectors where the rebellion was rising. "You still want to run?" he asked softly. She turned her head slightly, her eyes softer than he'd ever seen them. "No," she said, "not if you're beside me." He smiled, leaning back, letting the quiet settle over them like a blanket. They weren't heroes, they weren't soldiers anymore. They were something else now, something harder to name. Survivors, maybe, believers in peace when peace was punished, or maybe just two broken pieces that fit together. The ship hummed gently as it moved through the stars. And Jace looked at her again. Not the commander, not the weapon, just her. She walked over, sat beside him, and placed her hand over his. No words spoken, no ceremony, just warmth. After a while she broke the silence, her voice soft and unsure. "Do you still see me as cold?" she asked, not looking at him. He shook his head. "No," he said. "I see you as fire pretending to be ice." She laughed then, the sound quiet but real. The first real laugh he had ever heard from her. They didn't know what the future held. Not with half the galaxy hunting them, not with factions rising and old enemies waking up, but in that stolen moment, drifting through space. There was no war, no fear, no duty. Just two people who should have never met, but somehow did. Jace leaned closer, his voice low, his words slow like a promise. "I thought you were my enemy," he whispered, "but when I was alone with you, I found something I didn't expect." She looked at him finally, eyes glowing softly in the dim light. "And what did you find, human?" she asked, the edges of her mouth pulling into something close to a smile. He didn't answer with words, he just leaned in, forehead to hers, breath to breath, and she didn't pull away. Outside the window, the stars moved slowly, unaware of the Kuri storm the two of them had left behind and the one they were flying toward. But together, they weren't afraid, not anymore, because in a galaxy where cold leaders ruled with silence, they had found a different kind of power trust, and in the end, that was enough.